Satguru.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vinvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome, everyone. Can't say good morning. We don't know what time zone you're in. But here it's morning on Sunday. I'll share the screen. Should be saying our three kinds of temples.
Yes.
What will we see? That's good. Okay. Oh, we're backwards today. We're doing the Raising Children second, and we're doing the spirituality and religion comparison first. So this is, Publisher's Desk is going to lead into some comments about spirituality versus religion and relating it to our three kinds of temples. It's a Publisher's Desk from 2009, July, Hinduism Today. Oh, it's about 12 years old. And starts with a question for you. What are the three kinds of temples? Yes. English is fine. The Publisher's Desk uses Sanskrit. That's the nature of Hinduism today. We tend to use the Sanskrit terms. Three kinds of temples. It would be hard to overestimate the power and importance of the temple in Hindu culture and spiritual practice, the home of God to which we go for solace and connection with the divine. When we think of temples, we naturally think of community temples, those always welcoming, often ornate, magical spaces, which I like to call pura mandiras, or village temple. Worshipping in these temples is a central practice in Hinduism, but there is a broader, seldom discussed understanding of the temple in Sanatana Dharma, which embraces two other sacred places of communion as equally important. One is the home shrine, or griha mandira, and the other is the soul temple, or atma mandira. So we get the story. Stories are the best part. This Publisher's Desk was written in response to a diminished appreciation of the importance of the home shrine and almost no thought about the atma mandira. But one does naturally lead to the next. In Saiva Siddhanta, worship is pursued through a natural progression. Begins in the community temple, next is added worship in the home shrine, and third we add worship in the temple of the soul through meditation. These practices are called respectively Charya, Kriya, and Yoga. This Publisher's Desk presents the ideas of three temples in a simple way without any Saiva Siddhanta terminology. Okay, so we got a slide which says Charya, Kriya, and Yoga. Three padas. Janapada is not mentioned. That is the fourth pada. Hindu communities revolve around the local temple, which serves as the hub of culture, worship, festivals, and more. For the devout, the ideal is to attend a puja at the community temple daily or at least once a week, and to participate in the major holy festivals celebrated within its precincts. This allows us to experience the blessings of God and the gods regularly, and to enjoy frequent fellowship with other devotees. A Hindu temple's devonic rays have the power to transform the course of karma, open inner doors to new opportunities, assuage long-held hurts, and provide inner visions equaling the fullness of devotion. Regular worship at the community temple deepens our humility and our devotion to God. It also purifies and lifts our energy into higher chakras, the intuitive nature. We have arranged group pilgrimages to India and Sri Lanka since 1969, and some pilgrims on various programs had life-changing visions of Lord Vinayaga and as well as other deities. Such visions born of the intensity of pilgrimage, keyword intensity, and inner striving would often come in the form of the stone or bronze murti moving and smiling at them, or turning into an animated human-like figure. Some devotees with their eyes closed inwardly saw the deity's face, as real as any living being. Though occasionally a devotee may have a vision of the deity, the more common way we experience him is as uplifting, peaceful, divine energy or Shakti that radiates out from the image. These blessings of the deity are called Sanidhya and refer to the radiance and blessed presence of Shakti in and around the temple. Some of Gurudeva's writings, he also refers to these blessings as the darshan of the deity. It's easiest to feel these blessings at the high point of the puja when the flame is held high and the bells ring the loudest. So the darshan may be an unusual use of the word. For some of you, you're not used to Gurudeva doing that, but to Gurudeva, darshan is two-directional. Usually we think of it as one-directional. I am seeing the deity, darshan. But the deity is seeing me. So it's two-directional, and the deity seeing you is the reason you're receiving blessings. So interesting. Analogy with the sun. If we go outside on a sunny day and close our eyes, we can feel the sun's rays on our skin without seeing the sun in the sky. And in that way experience the sun. This is similar to what happens in the temple. Our inner or spiritual eye, the third eye, is not open, so we don't see the deity. However, we can feel in our nervous system the spiritual energy that radiates out from the murti and in that way experience the deity. Gurudeva shares an insightful description of this process in his book, Loving Ganesha. What is this Shakti, you may be wondering? It is being in the presence of divinity. All holy men and women emanate all of these Shaktis, and you can too, some stronger than others. Shakti is divine radiation from the third world, causal plane, through the second world, astral plane, into the first, physical plane. The astral body is in the second world and lives inside the physical body. It is through the astral body that Shakti is felt. Then we get the story. Gadavul Temple. Story about Shakti. Gadavul was founded in 1973, and 12 years later, 1985, we had a 12th year Kumbhabhishekam. And the priest took the power of the temple into the kumbhas and placed them in a tent under a nearby tree. And the change was dramatic. The temple that had felt like a holy place a few hours before now felt like an empty warehouse. There was no sense of sanctity at all left in the building. The priests had removed it and placed it under the tent. So isn't it amazing that the priests have the training that they can create sanctity in the building and they can take it away too. So that really impressed me. That's what the next slide says. deeply as to what the special blessing, energy, Shakti, Sanidhya, they're all synonyms, darshan of the deity, that is usually present in the Hindu temple feels like, and how blessed we are to be in its presence. In addition to worship, we can also perform seva at the temple and accrue even more spiritual benefits. Tirumandaram, Rishi Tirumular, list the traditional chores. Verse 109. The simple temple duties, lighting the lamps, picking flowers, lovingly polishing the floors, sweeping, singing the Lord's praise, ringing the bell, and fetching ceremonial water, these constitute the dasamarga, path of the servant, which is the marga that relates to the charya pada. Each one has a pada and a marga. The marga shows the relationship of the devotee with God. So the relationship gets closer, and it starts, the devotee is the servant, God is the master. That's about as far apart as you can get in a relationship. So these chores, if you have time, are really important. In other words, if we have time, we just don't want to go to the temple, worship, leave a small offering and call it good. We want to perform some of the duties, because it's very, helps us become more humble, purifying, etc. There's a number of benefits. That's an important part of this stage. Charyapada is actually doing the temple duties. Over the last few years, I've had the privilege of attending Kumbhabhishekams for Shiva temples in Perth, Australia, and Atlanta, Georgia, Venkateshwara Temple in Central Florida, Lord Murugan Temple in Montreal, Canada, BAPS, Swaminarayan Temples in Houston, Texas, Toronto, Canada, Delhi, India, Bhairava Temple in Karnataka, India, Lord Ganesha in Phoenix, Arizona. Special ceremonies conducted on these occasions by an especially large number of well-trained priests are always exceptionally uplifting times. On most of these occasions, there is some interaction with the youth of the temple as a formal seminar, a lecture, or simply an informal question and answer session. During one of the breaks at one of the Kumbhabhishekams, I was chatting with some of the older youth who were sons and daughters of the trustees and other key members. They were challenging me with the question, since God is omnipresent, what is the need to build large temples to worship Him? The cost of construction is quite large, plus then you have the ongoing cost of monthly maintenance that has to be met. Couldn't all that money be better spent? Good question. Obviously thinking about it, discussing it. Well, my answer went something like this. Since God is omnipresent, shouldn't we be able to experience Him equally everywhere? For example, God permeates this room. By looking intently at the room, shouldn't you be able to experience God? In theory, you should, because God is there. I then asked those present to look around how many can see God permeating this room. So that's when their theory fell apart. All the youth present had to admit that they couldn't see God permeating the room, even though God is permeating the room. I then continued, practically speaking, God's omnipresence is a very subtle form of consciousness, too subtle for most of us to experience unless we are quite skilled in meditation. So it can be done, but you have to be a very good meditator to accomplish it. And then I gave an analogy with other objects that are difficult to see. If we want to see a distant galaxy, we can go to an observatory and use a powerful telescope. To see into the nucleus of a cell, we can go to a laboratory and use an electron microscope. Similarly, to see God, there's a powerful tool we can use to enable us to be successful. We can go to the temple and through the sanctified murti experience God. Temples, and especially the murtis within them, have this ability because they are especially sacred place for 3 reasons: construction, consecration, and continuous daily worship. So they all start with the same sound, which makes it easy to remember. Hereditary temple architects, known as tapiris, are commissioned to design and construct the temple. By tradition, every stone is set in place according to the sacred architecture found in the Agamic scriptures. Consecration occurs through the powerful ceremony of Kumbhabhishekam, which involves a large number of priests performing elaborate ceremonies for days on end. So we could say consecration is an English equivalent of Kumbhabhishekam. Then begins the schedule of daily pujas that are held thereafter, conducted by professional priests. The daily pujas sustain and gradually increase the sanctity set in motion at the Kumbhabhishekam. In these 3 ways, the temple and the murtis within them are sanctified. If you are finding fulfillment by worshiping in your community temple, don't stop there. Consider extending your devotional life to the griha mandira or home shrine. The ideal Hindu home centers around the home shrine, a special room set aside and maintained to create a temple-like atmosphere, which holds us close to our spiritual goals and practices. In this holy space, we conduct puja, read scripture, perform sadhana, sing bhajana, and do japa. Here we can always feel the presence of God and the gods, whom we honor especially in the morning and evening and before meals, which we offer to them before we partake. The home shrine works best when it is an entire room. That way it can be strictly reserved for worship and meditation, unsullied by worldly talk or other activities. This is the ideal. However, when that is not possible, it should at least be a quiet corner of a room and more than a simple shelf or closet. Make the shrine a refuge for all family members where they can find peace and solace, where they can connect with the gods and offer their praise, prayers, and practical needs. So, a comment on that. Gurudeva started stressing the home shrine way back probably in the 1990s for North America, shall we say. It's focused on. And that's because it wasn't that common for Hindu families to have a serious home shrine. Somehow the tradition that they followed in their native place, India, Sri Lanka, or elsewhere, they weren't following in North America. So Gurudeva put a lot of energy into the idea of the importance of the home shrine and explaining it, and even named a whole book, Living with Shiva, with the idea of the home shrine. How do you live with Shiva? Well, you have to have a home shrine, and Shiva lives in the shrine. And then you have to take care of Shiva and do puja, and eventually Shiva becomes the head of the home. I remember an elderly Hindu in Chicago. It's the type of person who remembers everything that was said, wonderful ability. So he remembered everything Gurudeva said on this point. He said, it's no longer your home. It's Shiva's home. Shiva owns the deed to the home. You're just living there. He went on and on. Remembered exactly what Gurudeva said. So another fact is that other Hindu teachers are giving more emphasis to the home shrine. I know the Swami and Chinmaya Swami and Dallas makes it a point if a family in his group is getting a new home, he makes sure that they have a separate room for a shrine room. These are very fancy places that they're getting in that part of Texas. You can get very large homes for a reasonable price. So he was making sure they bought a home where they could have a separate shrine room. So it was nice to see that. I hadn't seen that so actively promoted. So it's much better than it used to be, shall we say. Here, worship traditionally begins before dawn with a simple act of dedication for the coming day. After a bath, morning puja is performed, usually by the husband, the wife, and older children may also perform their own puja at another time of day. The whole form of home worship is called Atmartha Puja, which is simple. We lovingly invoke the deities, tender choice offerings, and beseech their blessings for our family and the world. This early morning worship begins the day on a religious note, blessing the work and activities that follow. Evening devotionals include a simple arati, bhajana, meditation, and reading of scripture. A day's end routine that carries family members to lofty celestial realms during sleep. The temple-like atmosphere of the shrine room can prevail through the home if family members handle disagreements and difficult issues in a harmonious, professional way, avoiding arguments and expressions of anger. So that's very important. In other words, you need to be living with Shiva, you need a shrine that's used on a daily basis, but you can't have a lot of arguments going on. That won't help the vibration build. So notice, it doesn't say we don't disagree. It doesn't say there's no disagreements in a family. That's unrealistic. It says we handle disagreements and difficult issues in a harmonious, professional way, avoiding arguments and expressions of anger, just like we would at our place of work. If there's a disagreement in a place of work, you can't argue and express anger. You could lose your job. So we need to treat the home in a professional way, and if we have stress to let off, we need to let it off somewhere else, which is another talk. How elaborate should the puja conducted in the home shrine be? It can vary from short and simple to long and complex. The late and renowned Sri 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 Chandrasekharendra Saraswati Mahaswamiji of Kanchipuram, Kamakoti Peetham commented, every family must perform puja to Ishvara. Those who find it convenient to do so may conduct elaborate types of puja after receiving proper initiation into them. Others need perform only a brief puja, not lasting more than 10 minutes or so. Office goers must offer at least this brief worship. The sacred bell must ring in every home. Every home. So he's very strong on that. And he points out that there's different types of Atmartha Puja. A simple one and then a more advanced which requires initiation. So our simple one is the Ganesha Puja. The mantras have been carefully chosen, and if they're slightly mispronounced, it's not going to cause grief, anything like that. It's something that everyone can do and benefit from. Ideally, all members of the family gather together in the shrine room for a puja each morning. Additionally, visiting the shrine at other key times brings special benefits. Visiting the shrine before leaving the home reminds you that work is also worship, when approached in a spiritual way, a strategic attitude that helps you maintain a religious perspective during your time out of the home. Visiting the shrine upon returning home provides a few moments to release any negativity, worldly vibrations you have taken on while away. Visiting before an important event, such as a job interview or a major exam at school, you can pray for special blessings and guidance. Retreating to this oasis when emotionally disturbed or reflecting on a personal problem reminds you to spiritually center yourself and overcome the challenge or upset condition with the blessings of God and the gods. So that's a very important part of Gurudeva's teachings. We don't want to be at the mercy of what happens to us and constantly reacting to it in various ways. We need to be able to handle whatever comes toward us, and if it throws us off center, to quickly recenter ourselves, spiritually recenter yourself. And learn to do that. And as Gurudeva liked to say, once you get good at it, then I'll really throw you off center. And then you have to work even harder to center yourself. So it's like a muscle. It's something you can strengthen through usage. These are several ways the home shrine can benefit the family. By your example, you teach these practices to your children, practices that will sustain them as they make their passage through life. Performing your own individual puja in the home shrine with sincerity and regularity unfolds a relationship with the divine that is likened to that of a child to a parent, called Pura Marga, path of the dutiful child. So we've gotten closer. We started servant to master, and now we're child to parent, moving closer. Tudamandram summarizes puja, reading the scriptures, singing hymns, performing japa in unsullied austerity. Truthfulness, restraint of envy, and offering of food. These and other self-purifying acts constitute the flawless Satputra Marga. If you are finding fulfillment by worshiping in the home shrine, don't stop there. Consider worshiping in the Atma Mandira, if you are not already practicing yogic meditation. Third place of worship is the temple within the body, which I call the Atma Mandira. Paramaguru Yogaswami said, God lives in this house, built of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, meaning your body. Therefore, keep the house clean and the mind pure, and conduct yourself with calmness. Looks like I'm one slide behind. Okay. His disciple, Markandeya Swami, recounted his guru's instructions. Yogaswami said, leave your relations downstairs, your will, your intellect, your senses. Leave the fellows and go upstairs by yourself and find out who you are. Of course, it's in the body, he's upstairs. Then you can go downstairs and be with the fellows. Yogaswami was describing the internal form of worship, meditation in the sacred chamber of the soul, wherein we quiet our physical bodies, still our astral and mental bodies, become centered in our immortal spiritual body of light, strive for, discover, and ultimately merge with God within. Through meditation, we temporarily set aside our mundane concerns and experienced our refined spiritual nature that is always serene and centered, source of intuition, solace, and strength for all our activities. Consistent practice of meditation has the power to increase our concentration, observation, understanding, compassion, appreciation, cooperation, mental acuity, emotional stability, willpower, and our ability to see God in all things and all people. God abides in all three of these temples. In the community temple, he is worshipped in elaborate formal ways, mystical ways that bring his Shakti or power into the inner chamber to bless the world. In the home shrine, he is worshipped in simple, loving ways which bring his presence into the home to guide the family through karma's sometimes difficult passages and bless their pursuits. In the chamber of the heart, he is worshipped as the life of life, the self of ourself, to awaken peace of mind, insight, inspiration, and enlightenment. The three temples stand as a central pillar of Hindu life. Successful worship in the three temples over many lifetimes culminates in jnana, divine wisdom, which we see in an enlightened being. Soul in its maturity immersed in the blessed realization of God, while living out earthly karma. Verse 1444 of Tudamandaram sums up our thoughts. Being the life of life is splendorous jnana worship. Oh, I'm going to read the Tamils. Uyir kuyir ai nitral on jnana pusai. So that's uyir kuyir, life of life. Beautiful phrase. Soul of the soul, life of life. Beholding the light of life is great yoga worship. So there's not that many scriptures that talk about seeing the inner light. It's not that common, but Tudamandaram is stressing that in a number of places. Uyir Koli Nokkal Mahayoga Pusai. Giving life by invocation is external worship, performing puja. So that idea of giving life, that's the avahana, stavana. You are bringing life into the murti. So you're giving life, you're invoking life, invoking the deity in the murti. That's what it means. Uyir Peru Mava Kanambura Pusai. And we get the last one. Adoration that displaces anger is charya worship. Interesting history on this one. Original translator, Dr. B. Natarajan, didn't use the word anger. He said something else. He didn't like it for some reason. So it's only in recent translations that the word anger has shown up. And it's very important. In other words, you find it right in Gurudeva's teachings. One of the major accomplishments we need to focus on when we first try and be spiritual is not getting angry. Anger is a serious issue with many individuals, and we have to learn to minimize it at least, shall we say. We're never trying to be 100% perfect, but we don't want to be punching holes in walls. So adoration that displaces anger is charya worship. So it's the idea that a common reason an individual gets angry is their will is thwarted. What they wanted to do, they're not able to do, or didn't work out as they thought, and that puts them into anger. And chakra-wise, every other chakra is connected. So the willpower is connected to memory, is connected to anger. So it's easy to go from a thwarted willpower into anger. And why it relates to charya is worshiping. We start to think about it not just in what we want to have happen, but Shiva's will be done. We start to be more accepting of what's happening in our life as what should be happening. And that acceptance is displacing anger. That's the idea. Seyit Kadai Nesa Shivapusayame. So Seyil is anger. Kadai is to shut out. So next is relating this presentation to the concepts of religious versus spiritual. Individuals who are religious but not spiritual would have no interest in the practice of meditation. This would be more common among older individuals. These are generalizations. Don't apply to everyone. And individuals who are spiritual but not religious would have no interest in attending the temple or performing puja at home. This would be more common among younger individuals, and it's a very strong trend. Should really say that another way. The number of individuals every decade who declare themselves to be spiritual but not religious is growing significantly. It's a very strong trend. So these two perspectives, meaning exclusive, we're spiritual but not religious, we're religious but not spiritual, they're fine. We're not trying to criticize them. But at least we should know intellectually that there's more to Saiva Siddhanta than just the temple. We have the home shrine and meditation. So that knowledge should be out there. And it's not out there enough. What the other levels of practice are that relate to going to the temple. And as we will mention in coming Zoom satsangs, the ideal is to be both religious and spiritual. In Saiva Siddhanta, we're trying to be both, not trying to be one or the other, meaning we utilize the temple, the shrine room, and meditation, all three areas were engaged in appropriate balance. In other words, the amount of time you dedicate to each one keeps changing, depending if you're primarily in the Charya Pada, the Kriya Pada, the Yoga Pada, or the Anapada. But you still do them all. But the amount of time you devote to them changes. So we'll talk about that a number of times more, but basically here the main idea is there's three areas. Knowledgeable Saivites should know there's three areas, three types of temples, or three practices, Charya, Kriya, and Yoga. So Charya is attending the puja at the temple. Kriya is performing the puja in your shrine room. Yoga is meditation. That is our first topic, and slightly long today. Too many stories. We're back to raising children. Should be about 10 minutes more. This is published. Copies are being mailed out, so in the USA at least, copies should be showing up soon if you get the printed copy. The worldwide distribution of mail is kind of crazy, so we can't even mail things to Mauritius at the moment. The digital version goes online April 1, if you're not able to get a printed copy. And as you know, we're doing this in 9 Zoom satsangs. We're up to number 5 today. Section is 9 key spiritual qualities, and 5th quality to develop is playful self-contentment, so we'll define it. Playful self-contentment is expressed when a child's usual mood is fun-loving, happy, and satisfied. So the question to you is, how is playful self-contentment cultivated? So the text gives 4 answers, so see if you can come up with 1 or 2. How do we cultivate playful self-contentment? It is through the parents living and verbalizing the philosophy that life is meant to be lived joyously. Very important. It's by holding the perspective that happiness does not depend on external circumstances, but is a consciousness we can claim, whether life is free of or filled with challenges. Very important there. By teaching the children to be satisfied with what they have in the present rather than dissatisfied about what they don't have. Seeing too many ads generates discontent. Nurtured by the family, spending time together filled with play and laughter. The ability to remain joyful, secure, and content enables one to face with equanimity the ups and downs of life. Gurudeva described the contentment, santosha, that we should teach children. True santosha is seeing all pervasiveness of the one divine power everywhere. The light within the eyes of each person is that divine power. With this in mind, you can go anywhere and do anything. So that's the idea of uyur, the light within the eyes of each person. I'll read that last sentence again. I kind of didn't give it enough emphasis. With this in mind, you can go anywhere and do anything. meaning if you're seeing the divine in everyone you meet, you're kind of protected, surrounded by divinity. Contentment is there inside you and needs to be brought out. It is a spiritual power, so yes, do what makes you content, but know that contentment really transcends worrying about the challenges that face you. Worry is a choice. Some people worry a lot, but they're choosing to worry. You don't have to worry. Worry is not a positive state of mind. It's not productive. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the people involved in the situation you're worrying about. It's better to choose an affirmation, a visualization of the result you want. Short story on that. This was probably 2009, 2010, after the financial crisis. Mother was here and her son was working in Singapore and he was out of a job. So she said, I'm worrying about my son getting a job. So is that helping the son, that she's worrying about him? No, it's not sending him positive thoughts. So I said, well, you need a visualization. See him in a tall office building at the top, looking out on Singapore with a great job. Then that's helpful. So we don't want to worry. Place it with positive images and affirmations. Then we get wise precepts. Okay, one slide behind there. Karma and reincarnation. Lots of people are believing in it. Again, that's another strong trend, is the number of people in Western countries believing in reincarnation is strongly growing as well. Second half of the 20th century, Hindu concepts became more and more popular and influential in the West. For example, every year thousands of Westerners take up the belief in karma and reincarnation as a logical explanation of what they observe in life. Contemporary expression of the law of karma is what goes around comes around. Karma is the universal principle of cause and effect. Our actions, both good and bad, come back to us in the future, helping us to learn from life's lessons and become better people. So that's a very important point. If you're teaching someone about karma, it can be thought of as it's punishing us when we do something wrong. It can be looked at as a negative thing. But it's just teaching us the consequences. It's a neutral principle. It teaches us the consequences of positive actions, the consequences of negative actions. And if it was a negative action, we need to be observant and learn and decide at some point not to repeat that action, which is the learning. Reincarnation is the belief that the soul is immortal and takes birth time and time again. Through this process, we have experiences, learn lessons, and evolve spiritually. Finally, we graduate from physical birth and continue learning and evolving on inner planes of consciousness without the need for a physical body, till ultimately we merge in God. The belief in karma and reincarnation gives children a logical explanation to what otherwise may seem an unjust, indifferent, or godless world. They can be taught that challenging questions such as the following all have logical explanations when viewed through the beliefs of karma and reincarnation. Question: what are some of the challenging questions to which the law of karma provides answers? Questions that children might ask. See if you can figure out one or two. The text is going to give four answers. Why do some innocent children die so young? That's a real problem when that happens. And there's no belief in karma. It can shake someone's belief in God. They can totally lose their belief in God when that happens. if they're not well grounded in the concept of karma, because it doesn't make any sense. Why are some people so much more talented than others? Why do some people act in evil ways and others don't? Why is it that a mean-spirited person may succeed and a good-hearted person fail? So this is one I've actually run into a few times, and people that mention it are concerned. And I say, well, the law of karma is there, but it's slow. Meaning, just because you did something in this life doesn't mean the karmic fruit of that comes back in this life. It comes back eventually. Belief in a single life makes it hard to reconcile such things, causing one to question how a just, benevolent God could allow them to happen. But an understanding of karma, God's divine law, which transcends this one incarnation and brings to bear our actions from past lives on earth, offers profound insight. That insight may have been a child murderer. That innocent child may have been a child murderer. That musical genius may have so perfected his art in a past life that he inherits a rare talent at birth and becomes a child prodigy. The beliefs of karma and reincarnation give us a spiritual purpose to our life. We know that the reason we are here on earth is to mature spiritually and that this process extends over many lives. We know that our karma is our teacher in this process, teaching us both what to do and what not to do through the reactions it brings back to us in the future. So our current incarnation, the nature of our body, family, inclinations, talents, strengths, and weaknesses, is specifically designed by us to help us face the fruits of our past actions, both positive and negative, and thus learn and evolve spiritually. Last section is imparting beliefs and attitudes. And this is man's threefold nature. This is a very important one. Our nature can be described as threefold: spiritual, intellectual, and instinctive. Sometimes I say intuitive just to get an I in there. Either way, one or more of these aspects predominate uniquely in each of us according to our maturity and evolution. Spiritual nature is the pure, superconscious, intuitive mind of the soul. The intellect is the thinking, reasoning nature. The instinctive aspect of our being is the animal-like nature, which governs the physical body and brings forth strong desires and lower emotions such as anger, jealousy, and fear. So said another way, the reason we get angry is, well, we have an instinctive nature. It comes along with a physical body. You can't have a physical body and not have an instinctive nature. Not possible. As I mentioned, the goal is to learn to control these animal instincts, such as anger, as well as the ramifications of the intellect and the pride of the ego, so as to manifest our spiritual nature. It's the instinctive nature that contains the tendencies to harm others, disregard the prudent laws of society, and stir up negativity within the home, the nation, and beyond. Those who are expressing such tendencies are young souls who have yet to learn why and how to harness the instinctive forces. It may take such persons many lives to rise to a higher consciousness and live in their spiritual nature. What is the Hindu approach to these individuals is the question to you. The Hindu approach, which children can be taught from an early age, is not to label these individuals as evil, but rather to focus on restraining their hurtfulness and helping them learn to control these instincts and improve their behavior. So that's what a well-functioning justice system is supposed to do. If someone's behavior is really outlandish, you have to restrain them so they don't hurt others. And then you're not trying to simply punish them, you're trying to help them improve their behavior. Gurudeva's description: people act in evil ways who are not yet in touch with their soul nature and live totally in the outer instinctive mind. What the ignorant see as evil, the enlightened see as the actions of low-minded and immature individuals. So this relates nicely to the Tirukural. You may not have noticed this in the Tirukural. Tiruvalluvar uses three distinct approaches for convincing the reader to follow the advice he is giving. And each of the three types relates to spiritual, intellectual. The three types correspond to the three types of spiritual, intellectual, and instinctive. Start in verse 320. Tiruvalluvar is taking the approach of showing a reasonable benefit or disadvantage for the action. In other words, in this case, an intellectual person will see that if he does this, he will end up harming himself, so therefore it is best not to do it. He's giving a reason. All suffering recoils on the wrongdoer himself. Thus, though desiring not to suffer, refrain from causing others pain. Very reasonable, right? If you don't want to suffer, you need to not cause others pain. Intellectual. Second approach, Tiruvalluvar presents an action as simply the actions that high-minded or spiritual individuals do. In other words, it is simply the right course of action. No benefits are mentioned, such as in verse 317. So that's for the spiritual individuals. The highest principle is this: never knowingly harm anyone at any time in any way. Well, he doesn't give any benefits, right? Doesn't say if you do this, then this is the benefit you'll receive. He just says this is the right thing to do. Then we have the third approach, why an action should not be done, which is that it creates an image of a very unpleasant consequence. I call this the scare tactic approach. It's appropriate for individuals who can be motivated in no other way, who are predominantly of the instinctive nature. We have one verse on that. Worthy men yield their gifts when told of a need. So that's a spiritual person. But like sugar cane, base men only give when crushed and squeezed. Hard to get them to give. Oh, thank you very much. A little bit over time. Om. Om. Om.
Thank you, Sadhguru. Thank you.